Hey there, food fans! Today we're cranking up the 8-track, donning our polyester best and diving headfirst into the wonderful, wacky world of 1970s cuisine. Get groovy, because we're about to take a trip back in time to where the kitchens were avocado green and orange, the sideburns were long, and the food. Oh, the food was something else. Picture this, harvest gold appliances gleaming under low-hanging macrame potholders. The air thick with the aroma of simmering casseroles and freshly baked quiche. A fondue pot bubbles merrily on the countertop, its chocolatey scent mingling with the herbaceous aroma of a nearby terrarium. Yes, terrariums were totally a thing. This, my friends, is the 1970s kitchen, a place where convenience foods reigned supreme and dinner parties were all the rage. So grab a glass of tang, settle in and get ready to explore the culinary landscape of the me decade. We'll uncover the stories behind the dishes, decode the trends that shape them, and perhaps even glean a little inspiration for our own modern meals. After all, everything old is new again, right? The 1970s, a decade of bell-bottoms, disco fever, and let's face it, some pretty interesting food trends. This was a time of culinary experimentation, where convenience foods were embraced with open arms, and international flavors began to seep into the American culinary consciousness. Think of it as a melting pot of traditional home-cooked meals colliding head-on with the rise of processed foods and fast food chains. On the one hand, you had the classic meatloaf, mashed potatoes and gravy, the embodiment of comfort food. But on the other, you had the rise of dishes like quiche, a sophisticated import from France that quickly became a brunch staple. And let's not forget the ubiquitous fondue pot that rolled over into the 70s from the 60s, a symbol of communal dining and sophisticated entertaining. This was the era of the company's special, a time when impressing your guests with a fancy meal was a badge of honor. From the rise of the salad bar, where you could pile your plate high with gelatinous salads and creamy dressings, to the advent of instant pudding mixes and pre-packaged snacks, the 1970s was a time of both culinary innovation and convenience. It was a time when families gathered around the television trays to enjoy TV dinners, and when the crock-pot became an indispensable tool for busy families on the go. So let's fire up those ovens, chill the jello molds, and get ready to relive the culinary adventures of the 1970s. The 1970s, a time of groovy music and even groovier food, also saw its fair share of breakfast revolutions. Gone were the days of simple toast and cereal. Okay, maybe not gone entirely, but they were facing stiff competition from a new wave of breakfast contenders. This was the era where breakfast started to branch out, embracing both sweet and savory, the familiar and the exotic. Imagine the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air, competing with the sweet scent of tang being mixed in a tall glass. The morning news played on a tiny kitchen television, while families gathered around breakfast tables adorned with brightly patterned placemats. Yes, placemats were a big deal. Breakfast in the 70s was a fusion of traditional favorites and new convenience-driven options. From instant oatmeal packets promising a hot, hearty meal in mere minutes, to the emergence of breakfast sandwiches, the 70s were all about making breakfast fit into increasingly busy schedules. But it wasn't just about speed and convenience. There was also a growing emphasis on sophistication, on elevating the first meal of the day. Enter the quiche. Quiche, that elegant concoction of eggs, cheese and pastry, took the 1970s breakfast scene by storm. What was once considered a fancy French dish, reserved for special occasions or brunch at a chic bistro, quickly became a household staple. Suddenly it seemed like every cookbook and women's magazine featured a quiche recipe, each more elaborate than the last. There were quiches filled with everything from the classic Lorraine combination of bacon and cheese to more adventurous variations featuring spinach, mushrooms and even seafood. The crust, too, became a canvas for culinary creativity, with options ranging from traditional pastry to crusts made with Bisquick or even crumbled crackers. The rise of quiche in the 1970s can be attributed in part to the growing fascination with all things French and European. This was the era of Julia Child, after all, and her infectious enthusiasm for French cuisine inspired home cooks to try their hand at dishes that were once considered beyond their reach. But quiche was more than just a passing fad. It represented a shift in breakfast habits, a desire for something more substantial and satisfying than a bowl of cereal. While quiche may have been the breakout star of the 1970s breakfast table, it was far from the only option. This was also the decade that saw the rise of the breakfast sandwich, a portable and convenient meal that perfectly embodied the fast-paced lifestyle of the era. From the humble Egg McMuffin, introduced by McDonald's in 1971, to homemade versions piled high with bacon, sausage and cheese, the breakfast sandwich quickly became a go-to for busy mornings. And let's not forget about the sweet side of the 1970s breakfast. This was the era of sugary cereals like Fruity Pebbles and Count Chocula, often served with a generous helping of Tang, the orange-flavoured drink mix that was practically synonymous with the decade. Pancakes, waffles and French toast continued to be popular choices, often drenched in syrup and butter. But perhaps the most iconic sweet breakfast treat of the 1970s was the Pop-Tart. Introduced in 1964, Pop-Tarts really hit their stride in the following decade, with new flavours and varieties popping up all the time. Whether you preferred the frosted strawberry or the unfrosted brown sugar cinnamon, there was a Pop-Tart flavour for everyone. Lunch in the 1970s. A time when lunchboxes were metal, thermoses were orange, and sandwiches were often cut into fun shapes. This was the era of the brown bag lunch, a carefully curated collection of homemade goodies and store-bought treats, all designed to fuel an afternoon of schoolyard games or office shenanigans. Imagine opening your lunchbox to find a peanut butter and jelly sandwich cut into the shape of a star, nestled next to a bag of chips and a shiny red apple. Or perhaps your mum packed a thermos of Campbell's tomato soup paired with a grilled cheese sandwich, the ultimate comfort food combo. Yes, lunch in the 70s was a delightful mix of nostalgia and practicality. But lunch wasn't just about what was packed in those iconic lunchboxes. It was also a social event, a time to gather with friends and family, whether around the kitchen table or in a crowded school cafeteria. For many, lunch was a welcome break from the hustle and bustle of the day, a chance to recharge and refuel before tackling the rest of the afternoon. The 1970s were the heyday of the casserole. These one-dish wonders were a staple on lunch tables across the nation, offering a hearty and convenient meal that could feed a crowd. From the classic tuna noodle casserole with its creamy sauce and crunchy potato chip topping, to the ever-popular green bean casserole, a Thanksgiving leftover that somehow became a year-round favourite, casseroles were the epitome of comfort food. But the casserole craze wasn't just about convenience. These dishes were also incredibly versatile. You could use whatever ingredients you had on hand, whether it was leftover chicken, a can of cream of mushroom soup, or a bag of frozen vegetables. And because they were typically baked in the oven, casseroles were a relatively hands-off meal, freeing up busy home cooks to focus on other tasks. Casseroles also had a way of bringing people together. They were often shared at potlucks, picnics, and church socials, becoming a symbol of community and togetherness. And because they could be easily doubled or tripled, casseroles were perfect for feeding a crowd, making them ideal for families and those who enjoyed entertaining. Section 3. Sandwiches and sides completing the lunchtime lineup. While casseroles may have reigned supreme, lunch in the 1970s wasn't complete without a variety of sandwiches and sides. Sandwiches in particular were a lunchtime staple, offering endless possibilities for customization and creativity. From the classic BLT, with its crispy bacon, juicy tomato and crunchy lettuce, to the humble ham and cheese, a timeless combination that never disappoints. There was a sandwich for every taste and preference. And let's not forget about the rise of the submarine sandwich, or sub for short. These oversized sandwiches, piled high with meats, cheeses and vegetables, became a popular choice for lunch on the go. They were often found at deli counters and sandwich shops, offering a quick and satisfying meal for those with busy schedules. But no 1970s lunch would be complete without a selection of sides. Potato salad, macaroni salad and coleslaw were all popular choices, offering a creamy and refreshing counterpoint to the heartier main courses. And for a touch of elegance, there was always the classic deviled egg, a retro appetizer that never went out of style. Dinner in the 1970s, a time for families to gather around the table, often adorned with a brightly coloured tablecloth and those ubiquitous placemats to share a meal and recount the day's adventures. This was the era of the home-cooked meal, where convenience foods met culinary creativity, resulting in a unique blend of comfort and innovation. Picture this. The aroma of a perfectly roasted chicken fills the air, mingling with the sweet scent of a pineapple upside-down cake baking in the oven. The clinking of silverware against plates provides a rhythmic backdrop to the lively conversations happening around the table. Dinner in the 70s was more than just a meal. It was a ritual, a time for connection and togetherness. From the ubiquitous meatloaf, a classic comfort food that graced dinner tables across the nation, to the fondue pot, a symbol of sophistication and social gatherings, dinner in the 1970s was a culinary adventure. This was a time when cookbooks were treasured possessions, passed down through generations, and dinner parties were a chance to showcase one's culinary skills. Let's talk meatloaf. No, seriously, let's talk about the culinary icon that is meatloaf, a dish that reached peak popularity in the 1970s. This humble combination of ground meat, breadcrumbs and spices, shaped into a loaf pan and baked to perfection, was the epitome of comfort food. Every family had their own version, their own secret ingredient that elevated their meatloaf from good to legendary. Some swore by adding grated onion for sweetness, while others insisted on a generous helping of ketchup in the meat mixture itself. And let's not forget the topping, a crucial element that could make or break a meatloaf. Whether you preferred a simple ketchup glaze or a more elaborate combination of brown sugar and mustard, the topping added a touch of sweetness and tang that perfectly complemented the savoury meatloaf. But meatloaf was more than just a delicious and satisfying meal. It was also incredibly budget-friendly. A crucial consideration in the 1970s when families were always looking for ways to stretch their food dollars. A dish so resilient it rolled out of the 60s and tight into the 70s was fondue, dipping into the sociable side of the 70s. While meatloaf represented the heart of home-cooked comfort, fondue was the epitome of 1970s sophistication. This Swiss import, where cubes of bread and other goodies were dipped into a communal pot of melted cheese or chocolate, became synonymous with dinner parties and social gatherings. The fondue pot, often a brightly coloured ceramic or metal vessel perched precariously over a small flame, was the centerpiece of the meal, encouraging guests to gather around and engage in lively conversation as they dipped and swirled their way to culinary bliss. Fondue was all about the experience, the interactive nature of the meal, and the shared enjoyment of delicious food. And the dipping options were endless. Bread cubes were a classic, of course, but there were also vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, meats like cooked sausage and meatballs, and even fruits like apples and pears for those who preferred a sweeter fondue experience. Fondue represented a departure from the traditional sit-down dinner, offering a more relaxed and interactive way to dine with friends and family. Beyond the meatloaf and fondue exploring other dinner-time delights, meatloaf and fondue might have been the headliners of the 1970s dinner table, but they were far from the only stars of the show. This was a decade of culinary exploration where international flavors began to make their way into American kitchens, and convenience foods were embraced with open arms. One such example is the rise of chicken Kiev, a dish with a name that hinted at exotic European origins but which was, in fact, a thoroughly American invention. This dish, featuring tender chicken breasts rolled around a flavorful herb butter and breaded before being fried to crispy perfection, became a dinner party staple. It was often served with a side of rice pilaf and a simple green vegetable, a testament to the enduring love affair between American cuisine and convenience. And let's not forget about the ubiquitous casserole, a dish that seamlessly transitioned from the lunch table to the dinner table in the 1970s. From the classic tuna noodle casserole to the creamy chicken and rice casserole, these one-dish wonders continue to reign supreme, offering busy families a hearty and satisfying meal with minimal effort. The 1970s dinner table was a delicious and diverse landscape, a testament to the changing tastes and lifestyles of a nation. Snack attack, the rise of convenience and cravings. The 1970s, a decade where snacking went from a casual pastime to a national obsession. Convenience was key, and the grocery store aisles were bursting with brightly coloured bags and boxes, all promising a quick and tasty fix. This was the era of individually packaged treats, perfect for lunchboxes, after-school snacks, or satisfying those late-night cravings. Remember the crinkle of wax paper as you unwrapped a Hostess Twinkie? Or the satisfying snap of a Pringles can being popped open for the first time? These were the sounds of the 70s snacking revolution. From sweet to savoury, crunchy to creamy, there was a snack food for every palate and occasion. But it wasn't just about pre-packaged treats. The 1970s also saw the rise of homemade snack mixes, those salty sweet concoctions that were perfect for parties or just munching on while watching the latest episode of Happy Days, think Chex Mix, but with a decidedly 70s twist, often incorporating pretzels, peanuts and those addictive little cheese crackers shaped like fish. Section 2. The chip dip and cheese ball revolution party snacks of the 70s. No 1970s party was complete without a chip and dip set. These ceramic creations, often featuring a groovy avocado green or harvest gold glaze, were the ultimate symbol of 70s entertaining. And the dips themselves? Oh, the dips were a culinary adventure in their own right. French onion dip with its creamy base and those irresistible fried onion bits reigned supreme. But let's not forget about the creamy clam dip, often served warm with a smattering of chopped parsley, a true testament to the decade's love affair with all things seafood flavoured. And then there was the cheese ball. This iconic party appetizer, a sphere of creamy cheese studded with chopped nuts or coated in a layer of toasted sesame seeds, was a staple at potlucks, cocktail parties and family gatherings. It was the perfect make-ahead appetizer, and its versatility knew no bounds. Cheddar, cream cheese, even smoked salmon, the cheese ball could handle it all. Section 3. Between two slices, sandwich sensations of the decade. Sandwiches, those culinary chameleons, were just as popular for snacking as they were for lunch in the 1970s. But these weren't your average PB and J's. No, the 70s were all about embracing bold flavours and unconventional combinations. This was the era of the open-faced sandwich, a culinary canvas just begging for creativity. Take, for instance, the beefsteak tomato topper, a recipe featured in a 1970s cookbook. Imagine a thick slice of toasted bread, piled high with a juicy beefsteak tomato, then smothered in a creamy cheese sauce and broiled to bubbly perfection. It was a sandwich that was both elegant and satisfying, perfect for a light lunch or a sophisticated snack. But the sandwich innovation didn't stop there. This was also the decade that saw the rise of the sloppy joe, a messy but delicious concoction of ground beef in a sweet and tangy tomato sauce, piled high on hamburger buns. And let's not forget about the classic Monte Cristo, a ham and cheese sandwich dipped in batter and fried to a golden brown, a decadent treat that was often served with a side of sweet raspberry preserves. Section 1. A lasting legacy. The enduring appeal of 70s food. As we bid farewell to the avocado green kitchens and fondue-fueled gatherings of the 1970s, it's clear that the culinary legacy of this decade continues to resonate. Sure, some dishes might elicit a chuckle today. Anyone up for a gelatin mold salad? But the core values of 70s food still hold strong. It was a time when convenience and creativity collided, when families came together around the dinner table, and when a good casserole could cure just about anything. Think about it. The meatloaf, that stalwart of the 70s dinner table, is still a beloved comfort food, albeit with modern twists like ground turkey or lamb. Quiche, once a symbol of sophisticated brunch gatherings, has become a versatile dish, equally at home on a weekend breakfast table or a light weeknight dinner spread. And let's not forget the enduring appeal of the chip and dip combo, a party staple that transcends generations. Perhaps the most important takeaway from the food of the 1970s is the reminder that food is more than just sustenance. It's a reflection of our culture, our values, and our memories. It's a way to connect with loved ones, to share stories, and to create lasting traditions. Retro revival bringing 70s flavors into the 21st century. But the story doesn't end there. In recent years, we've seen a resurgence of interest in all things retro, and 70s food is no exception. Chefs and home cooks alike are revisiting the flavors of the decade, putting a modern spin on classic dishes and rediscovering forgotten gems. Fondue parties are back, albeit with updated dipping options like artisan breads and gourmet cheeses. The humble tuna noodle casserole has gotten a makeover, with the addition of fresh herbs and a sprinkle of toasted breadcrumbs elevating it to new heights. And let's not forget about the cocktail scene, where 70s classics like the Harvey Wallbanger and the Tequila Sunrise are making a triumphant return. This retro revival isn't just about nostalgia. It's about appreciating the ingenuity and creativity of the past and finding inspiration in unexpected places. It's about taking those familiar flavors and giving them a fresh, modern twist. So, the next time you're looking for a little culinary inspiration, take a page from the 1970s cookbook. You might be surprised at what you discover. And hey, if you happen to have a fondue set gathering dust in the back of your cupboard, now might be the perfect time to dust it off and invite some friends over. After all, everything old is new again, especially when it comes to the fun, flavorful, and always surprising world of 1970s food.